Welcome everyone to the Men's Heart Online Congress. My speaker and guest today is Kevin Benavides, also known as the Canvas Within. Kevin is a transformational coach who helps men mindfully master their minds and emotions, align with their purpose, and step into their full potential. He specialized in helping men to overcome the so-called nice guy syndrome and become the man they truly want to be and find the answers they're looking for inside of themselves. Welcome, Kevin. So happy to have you.
Thank you for having me, Felix.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, Kevin, so we wanted to talk about the nice guy syndrome today, what it is actually, where it comes from, but I'd love you to start to share a bit your own story, how you came to do what you're doing today, what has led you up to this place now.
Yeah, for sure. Totally open to sharing that with you and everyone who's watching, listening. It's my own journey, right? What my own transformation, my own pain that I had to heal and work, the things that I had to work on. And that really started now almost 10 years ago, actually, almost 10 years ago, 2013. Up to that point, was married, already had 2 kids. I was living the normal life, which is nothing wrong, right or wrong about it. But, living the normal life, having 2 kids, working a 9-to-5 job, just focusing in on going to work, being with the family, watching sports. That was it. That was my life. But then at 31, my dad got really sick. And when he got really sick, at that point, I thought he was going to pass away. And so a lot of stuff came up. I was really anxious. That anxiousness turned into panic. So I started having anxiety attack, panic attacks, whichever one. And then depression came with that. And then a lot of stuff from my childhood came up because I was started to sort of grieve his death, even though he was still alive, but he was dealing with his health issues. A lot of stuff from my childhood came up that I had repressed and suppressed for my whole life. And so a lot of stuff so it was a mental and emotional shitstorm, as I say. And I was a lot to deal with, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So for like 6 months I was in a really dark place, having a hard time functioning day to day. And then about 6 months in, I remember I had a counselor. I was going to the doctor, and I had a counselor to help me with my mental health, and it was supporting me, but it wasn't changing really anything. It was just helping me cope, right? And I remember at one point I had a heart monitor strapped on my chest because I was having heart palpitations, which is a thing with anxiety. But they still wanted to check, make sure there was nothing wrong. And I remember at that point, I literally thought I was dying. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I cannot live this way. I have 2 kids. I'm only 31 years old. There's no way I can continue living this way. Something has to change. And so my counselor at that time, he always suggested, over all the months that I was seeing him, you should try out mindfulness, learn mindfulness, learn mindful. And I was like, no, hell no. I don't even, what is this thing? Right? What is mindfulness? And then finally, 6 months in, with that heart monitor strapped on, I was like, I think I'm going to give that a try. I remember going into the meeting and he's like, what about mindfulness? Again, he would say it again. And then I'm like, actually, yeah, I think I'm going to give that a try. And the funny part is I knew someone who taught that. And so I went to this person, and sort of he became my mentor, my guide. And he supported me not just with learning mindfulness meditation or practices, but really diving in and starting to do that inner work to heal what was going on, really discover what was causing the anxiety, start tackling on the issues with dad within myself. And things started to unfold from there. And within like a month, I started to feel way better. And I started to, everything started to shift within me, in the sense of the fact that I've been, what's the word I'm looking for? Blinded to all this other part of life and part of ourselves, is our spiritual side, our trauma, our growth. I didn't even know any of this stuff, this world. And so I started to really get passionate about it, and I kept on doing the work on myself, and I started to feel better, and things started to shift in a positive way. But I started feeling this passion for personal transformation, for growth, for spirituality. And so I kept on learning, and then eventually I started to share. That's where the Canvas Within came from, was me sharing what I was going through art. And so that's where it all started. And I just started sharing online. I started continuing on, and things started to improve upon my life. About 4 or 5 years into this journey, so about 5 years ago, I really came to the awareness of what we would now call, or what I now call, people pleasing, codependency, the nice guy. I didn't have any terms for that, but I just realized I was always looking outside of myself for love, approval, validation, that I was never comfortable with being myself, saying what I needed to say, living the life that I wanted to live. I was always trying to shape shift myself into somebody else so that everyone else was happy with me. And I knew that this wasn't supporting me in many areas. And one major one was my marriage. And so I have to start tackling that on as well, right? I really started looking into that and working through that. And so it's just been a progression over years. And again, my passion for this work led me to, like, I want to help others. I don't want to just share it online and share my story online. I actually want to support others. And so about just over 2 years ago now, I made that decision to, like, okay, I'm going to shift my career into coaching. And so I invested in learning how to run a business, how to coach properly. And I thought, I want to support men who have gone through similar things that I have gone through. And here I am today, sort of supporting men with, healing their traumas, working on connecting with their authentic self, and living their best life, really doing that inner work so that their external life shifts as well. So that's really been my path to get to where I am right now.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it seems like a very natural process. Yeah.
Many years, but yeah, it is just one thing after another, to the point where it's like, this is it. Like, I had been denying myself that for so long. I didn't deny it to myself, because I was sharing online, right? Like, I had my own Facebook page. I then started a podcast back then a few times. So I was sharing things, like I was doing those things because I loved it, but I really started to take it seriously over the last couple of years. But it's been a progression for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can go right into this term of the nice guy. Where does it actually come from, and what are the characteristics of a nice guy? I mean, also, why does it make sense to use this term or this label? Because label can be, tricky.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So first off, the term in itself, a nice guy, was coined by Dr. Robert Glover, who wrote No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is right next to me here on my desk, because I have a bunch of books that I normally read, right? So anyways, so he's the one who came up with this term. And for him, he used this term as the nice guy, because a man who is a people pleaser, who is codependent, he will try to appear like he's this nice, altruistic person. Not that he is this horrible person and he's hiding it, but that's all he wants to present himself like, is this person who is easygoing. He agrees with everyone. Everybody likes him. So he has this facade of being nice, when sometimes he's actually not wanting to be nice. He's not actually wanting to agree with others, but he has to present that way. So we'll hear people say, "Oh, he's such a nice guy. He's not." And most of the time when we say that about another guy, it's because he is the actual nice guy. Like, it's a front. It's not actually who he is. And it's not that we can't be nice, but the way I like to look at it is not about being nice. It's about being kind from your heart. A nice guy is not being nice from his heart. He's being nice, again, to protect himself, to get what he needs. And this is all stems back from his childhood, right? From our childhood, from our adolescence. And everyone has their own sort of story and journey, but it really comes down to, we weren't we didn't feel safe to be ourselves authentically, and we had to suppress our needs and focus in on others, make everyone else happy to keep us safe as kids.
Yeah.
Right? It was an adaptive behavior which turned maladaptive as we grow up. But that's how we thought we would function, right? We don't think about this. This is very unconscious. And so we just continue living life where I'll hide my truth, I'll hide what I want, who I am, and I will always try to cater to everyone else, making sure everyone else is happy, because when they're happy, then I feel safe. That's really what it is. We don't feel safe in our bodies. We don't feel safe being ourselves. We don't feel safe in the world. And so we present ourselves in this accepting way so that we're safe, right? Nobody will be upset at us. Nobody will attack us. Nothing will happen bad to us, right? But like I said, it comes back to the fact that we're hiding our truth. We're hiding who we are, what we want, what we need. And then so we live this really inauthentic life.
Yeah, it makes sense for a child, you know, when you're completely dependent, you have to, you just want to find out a way to feel safe again. But then, yeah, becoming a man, it's not, I can see, we just keep on doing this, having
Repeating, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And one of the main things I know you had asked another question, I didn't fully answer it, but one of the main things that is very common for a lot of men. So a nice guy, if we were to take that term off, then you would hear they're people pleasers and or codependent, right?
Yeah.
Some men are just codependent with their partners and they're good with other people. Like they can share their truth with others. It's just their partner that they try to please. And then there's men that are just people pleasers in general, right? So they behave in these ways with everyone in their life. But one common thing for any man who is a people pleaser or codependent, the nice guy, is that he has sort of rejected his masculinity or masculinity in general. So a lot of his masculine traits he hasn't truly embodied. And that's what doesn't support him, right? The being assertive, standing up for himself, having a sense of direction, being able to lead. These are things that a nice guy does not do or has a really hard time doing.
Yeah.
And so that's all masculine traits. And so he's been wounded by the masculine, and or he spent a lot of time with women growing up. And because he spent a lot of time with women, he then learned what it means to be a man through the eyes of a woman or through women. And if you spend a lot of time around women who have been wounded by men, you're going to hear a lot of bad things about men. And so you're going to then take on and it's not okay for me to be X, Y, and Z this way, right? So let me just not be this way and I'll be more this, right? It's more acceptable to be like every other woman that's around me. So we take on more of that feminine side, which we have both, right? We have masculine and feminine within all of us, man or woman, doesn't matter what your gender is. But we'll tend to that. We'll tend to be more feminine, which doesn't support us because we need actually a balance of both, right? Both types of traits or whatever's under masculine and feminine. So, and that's my truth, right? And like I'm sharing about talking about a man this way, but that was me, right? That was me, definitely 100%. I had some men in my life, but again, not the greatest role models at times, but I spent a lot of time with women. I had all sisters, all my cousins were females, and my grandmother raised me, my aunts raised me. So like, I was surrounded by it, right? So when I look back, it's like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like, oh, that makes sense why all these things transpired for me. So yeah, it does come from my experience. So like, I'm not just talking about other men. I'm talking about, I know this is the truth for me as well.
Yeah, I think many men can relate to that. Myself, definitely, like, especially this, this feeling of I don't want to be rejected. So I try to please everyone, basically everyone. Yeah. And, I also feel like in our society, we have lost these, I mean, we have movies with kind of masculine role models, but like the real experience, I think it goes lost a bit. Maybe also because the men are always at work and the women usually stay with their mother or in the kindergarten, in school. It's all females. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been, I think, a variety of things has contributed to masculinity being sort of led astray, or us even learning what masculinity is, or having a man in general in our lives, right? If you go back into the last 100 years or so, you had the world wars, right? Which then meant those men came home traumatized and didn't have any ways to deal with what they went through, which did not support them and their families. And then the industrial revolution, men started going out and working and the women stayed home. So 100% men were no longer with their family like they were, in the 1800s, 1700s and before, where you're around your father more often because he's at home, or you work around the house, or you work with dad. Instead, now you're going out of the house, working a different job, so you're separated from dad and mom's home, right? So then that doesn't support us, right? We need both our mom and dad around to support us properly. So I think all that contributed as well. And I think we've just been led astray what masculinity is. And a lot of what it's turned into is harmful, hurtful. It is hurtful. It's misled. Yeah. So we think what we think masculinity is actually isn't, for the most part. What you're seeing is hurt. Is what you're seeing is wounded men. And because they're a man, and because they're behaving that way, we say, oh, that's masculinity. And so masculinity is toxic. No, that doesn't exist. We have toxic individuals, right? Healthy, wounded individuals. That's what we have. Masculinity in general is very necessary. So it's just deciphering through that and really figuring that out and seeing and seeing that truth and knowing that truth for yourself, so that you allow yourself. So that's an interesting piece with the nice guy is, when I coach a nice guy, I don't focus in on the masculinity piece until more down the road, because again, his views of masculinity have been skewed. But in doing the work to connect to himself authentically, he embodies the masculine traits without him even knowing, because that's who we are. When we connect to ourselves authentically, you're going to be confident. You're going to be assertive. You're going to have a sense of direction because you're connecting with self. This is all masculine traits. And then afterwards, when we tackle it, then obviously we work through that. But they're like, oh, surprise. Oh, wait a second. Actually, I'm living with these masculine traits, and I didn't even realize it, because it's a part of us authentically. So, I don't know how I got there, but I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, you answered a few questions I wrote down already in all of that.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, what comes to me, and I feel like it's also important to ask what is underneath the nice surface, because also when you say toxic masculinity, or it comes from somewhere, why do we end up behaving like that? And most important, like, what are the ways you help men to heal that stuff and embody their true authenticity?
Can you repeat the first question that you just said right now? What's underneath it?
What's underneath the nice surface, actually? Yeah.
A lot of resentment, a lot of anger, which is a form of resentment, is a form of anger, and a lot of wounding, a lot of suppression. A lot of suppression, right? There's a hurt little boy inside of every nice guy. I think there's a wounded little boy inside of all men, but especially the nice guy, because that's where it originated. For him to placate and hide himself and make everyone else happy is because something happened to him when he was younger that told him that it wasn't okay for him to be himself. It wasn't okay for him to express certain things. And so, there's a hurt little boy, and that's a part now, which leads me to what do I do when I support these men, is getting to the core, right? Where did this originate? What was the messages that you received? What was your relationship with mom? Because that's a big piece. of course, dad's an important piece because we talked about masculinity, but also mom, right? So get into the family of origins thing and starting to understand and working through. And the important piece is the expression, to finally express the things that you've held in for so long, to express the emotions that you've held back for so long. For some men, although there's a lot of anger, they've suppressed their anger.
Yeah.
So can we get in touch with that anger and let it out in a healthy way and start to learn what that anger was all about, and then what's underneath that anger, which is usually a lot of grief and sadness. So getting into that emotional work is important, and then getting in contact with our inner child is an important piece to start to take care of that wounded part of yourself and letting him know that, hey, I got your back, right? You don't have to hide. We don't have to protect ourselves, that we got this, right? But you have to show that part of yourself, because that's what's coming up when you're afraid to share what your truth is. That's not the you of today, because the you of today can rationalize why it's so important for you to share what you need to share. But it's that wounded part of yourself, that little boy inside, that's saying, hell no, don't say it's not safe, right? So that's the part of yourself that you have to tend to and take care of. You have to become the father to that boy. You have to become the mother to that boy, because you can't go back and fix things, and you can't get mom and dad to do it for you. You have to be that person for yourself. And so that's an important piece that I don't think we can really overlook. I think a lot of people try to overlook when working through like people pleasing and codependency, but I don't like doing that. I know that's an important piece. And in that process, it's connected to yourself. How can you start showing up for yourself? How can you start learning about yourself? Because if you've been hiding your truth and being someone else for everyone else and doing everything else that everyone else wanted to do, you lose connection with who you are, what you want, what you need, all these things. And so it's a rediscovery of yourself has to happen. And then it's you taking care of that, right? Not depending on others to give you what you need, which is what, people pleasing codependency is. It's more coming back home and like, oh, actually, I'm capable of providing this for myself, even if I can't give it to myself primarily, but I can communicate this with others. I can take the steps needed. I don't have to just, sit back and try to get my needs met through meeting the needs of others, right? So it's really the reconnection with yourselves is a big piece as well. And start facing some of these fears, which is like a fear of rejection, a fear of being shamed, those things. If you could start facing those fears by, again, speaking your truth, being yourself authentically, taking the steps that are true for you, that you want for yourself, you by default will start facing some of these fears. And then again, if you know how to comfort and take care of self and take care of that little boy, you'll be able to work through that. So that's sort of the process. So the roots, we have to get to the roots, take care of that inner child, and then reconnect with self and start living in alignment with your truth.
So what do you say to men? For example, I feel like sometimes, or actually often, I don't feel safe. So I think this must be an essential part of your work, and maybe this can lead us also to what are you offering in your work? How can people reach you?
For sure.
Yeah.
So safety, you're asking about safety?
Yes.
Sure. I want to answer that. I just want to take 1 second and plug in my computer so it doesn't die here. Okay, 1 second. My apologies. Yes. So safety, when we hear that word safety, you got to think, let's work back. When we hear the word insecure, what does that mean? Not safe, right? No wonder we have so much insecurities, because we don't feel safe. Well, where do we don't feel safe? We don't feel safe inside of our bodies. Our nervous system doesn't feel safe. And so there's regulation that has to happen, right? So to find that safety is for me, meditation, breath work is important, right? But also being able to comfort self, right? And being able to face some discomfort. You have a lot of nice guys, or maybe the majority of us we don't want to feel any discomfort. That's why we'll do whatever we can so that everything is comfortable, because we can't deal with that discomfort. It's not safe. But we have to allow ourselves to go past our comfort zone and get a little bit uncomfortable. Lean into that discomfort. I always say lean into discomfort. Some will say jump into the discomfort. I say lean into it every day. Lean into a little bit more discomfort, because the more that you can lean into that discomfort and do that thing that doesn't feel safe, and then you, in the end, you see that you are safe. What you're
Yeah.
also doing is you're proving to your nervous system, to your body, that we're okay. We're not going to die. Because that essentially, that's what it is. Our nervous system is set up, built, our body's built in a way, our mind is built in a way to keep us alive.
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually know that this thing of sharing my opinion is not gonna cause death. But as a child, maybe it did, right? In a sense, not necessarily physical death, but we were going to get hurt. It wasn't safe. So
Yeah.
we have to prove to ourselves that we can deal with this. We can deal with that discomfort. And that doesn't mean just do it and then be in a frantic, being chaos inside. Do it, feel that discomfort, but then recenter yourself through the breath, right? Through certain practices. And then you'll be like, oh, actually, and what is also happening is you're proving to yourself you can do it, not just to your body, but to yourself mentally. You're like, hey, actually, I can handle that discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
So then you'll be able to do it again and again, right? So, one, yes, taking that time to have practices to regulate your nervous system, to start, rewiring, as I say, your nervous system, and also just leaning into that discomfort a little by little by little by little, and then you start to really find that safety inside of you.
Yeah. So that's basically also, I guess, what you're doing with your clients then.
Yeah, right off the bat, there's certain practices that I start giving them. I want them to start implementing. And then, yes, as we, there's an assignment, there's a challenge, and those challenges will help them get uncomfortable. But just enough to allow them to do it, where it's not like I'm jumping off the cliff and I'm going to die kind of thing, but just allowing them to take that step forward and then coming back and like, oh, actually, I did that. And look at this amazing thing that happened because I did that. So again, we go in slowly, then eventually we really ramp it up as time goes on to just start doing the things that they weren't doing that actually didn't support them, right? And sometimes it could be just communicating a desire or need with a partner, and that could be really hard for a lot of us, right? It's not like these huge things where you go in front of a crowd and say something. That's not the thing, right? It's really just being able to communicate your truth. I come back to the word truth because that's a big piece for me. Communicate your truth. Communicate your truth in a mature, calm, as much as possible, respectful way, right?
Yeah. So that's like also the thing where men at home could start, I guess, with the small things and leaning into what's uncomfortable.
Yeah. It could be even a common thing for the nice guy when you're in a relationship is trying to fix your partner or trying to make her always happy, make sure she's always happy, right? That she's never angry, upset, sad. It's not that we necessarily want them overall to be that way, but we take it on as our responsibility to fix it, right? So we do that because their discomfort means our discomfort. So can you allow your partner to be with what they're dealing with? Not that you can't say, hey, hon, I'm here to support you if you need me, but not trying like I know, because I would be like frantic. Oh shit, she's upset. What do I do? What do I say? Okay, I'll do this. What happened? Try to fix it. Like, okay, let's fix this problem for you right away. And she's like, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen. I want you to give me space. But you can't give space if her discomfort is your discomfort. So even just that, if you resonate with what I'm saying, allow your partner to be in the mood that she is in, and you just regulate yourself and you try to stay the way that you were before, right? Like if you were happy, stay happy, right? So that's that little thing can shift a lot because you start to learn a lot about yourself. It's like, oh, I can't deal with this, but you can deal with that discomfort.
Yeah, that's a small thing, but it's a big thing at the same time. I can say
It
for
is.
myself, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's not about, in this example, it's not about like, I don't give a shit what she's feeling, what she's dealing with. That's not the case. But when it's the nice guy, it's overboard. It's like alert, alert, like a big alert, like a sign goes off, like the light goes off. It's like, oh my gosh, we got to fix this right away. Right. So it's like, no, you don't have to fix this right away.
Yeah. Yeah, so Kevin, to finish off, I would love you to share where people can find you and what offerings do you have currently?
Yeah, for sure. So right now, Instagram's the best way. I also have a Facebook page, but I'm more active in Instagram. Yeah, go on there, check out my content. If you're interested in any of my services, you can send me a DM or you can book a call using the link in my bio. Right now, that's how I'm sort of operating is through Instagram, and you'll get all the information you need there. And if you have any questions, send me a DM. I always answer, eventually get to you within maybe a couple of days, but I'll get to you. And yeah, we can talk on there and connect on there. But first off, just go check out my work on Instagram and go from there.
Yeah, I can say there's a lot of stuff to think about in your posts, yeah, there's so many different topics. You can get a good impression and also already stuff to make you think and realize a lot already. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I try to share a lot of my journey as much as possible and help men understand, see things from a different perspective. And of course, sometimes just challenge them, just call them out, right? As well. But yeah, I try to put as much value and information on my posts as possible. So there's a lot there, like you said. So a lot to dig into.
So thank you, Kevin, for taking the time. For
Thank
me,
you.
you
Appreciate you, man.
yeah,
Thank
continue.
you for doing this for men as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.